I've been meaning to ask you, Tony, how's Ethan going?
Oh, yeah, he's good now, Dave. He was pretty sick there for a while, but the doctors in hospital seem to have got him on the right medication. Seems to have come good.
Oh, fantastic. I've been praying for him the last few weeks. I'm so glad to hear he's better.
Oh, well, I didn't know you were. Thanks for that, Dave.
Oh, pleasure.
Do you pray much?
Oh, yeah, I pray all the time. Ever since I became a Christian. Yeah.
Oh, have you always been a Christian?
No. About 5 years ago, I was travelling down to...
Many times we're in the middle of an ordinary conversation, the sort of conversation that takes place on a daily basis, and yet we're able to make a contribution to that conversation that sets out the Christian perspective. Just a comment or a sentence or a brief answer. This is the principle going back to Colossians chapter 4. You remember Paul thinks of himself as having the responsibility to proclaim the gospel. That's what he's been asked to do. But his Colossian readers have the responsibility to answer. And behind this lies prayer and careful living. So imagine a person heads off to work, praying that they'll be a good representative for Jesus Christ. They try to live wisely so there's no contradiction between their life and their faith. And they want to make the most of opportunities because time is short and people may miss out unless someone speaks up. And then the conversation turns to a terrible tragedy in the news. Everyone is commenting on it as a disaster. And then the Christian is asked for an opinion and he simply says something like, "This is not heaven," or "This is a fallen world," or "This could be a big wake-up call," or even "This is what Jesus predicted." That sentence may be ignored or may get a response, but it's an answer with some grace and some salt in it. Same with a conversation in the lift at work. Someone may say, "I'm leaving early to visit my mother in hospital." And the Christian responds, "I'll pray for you," or "I'll pray for her." And that's all he says. But it speaks a lot for a later conversation. The answering ministry is a huge opportunity to comment on the normal things of life as a Christian or respond to a situation. And every topic has a Christian perspective, whether it's government or education or sex or money. One man I know would read the paper on the way to work and think through the way to a good conversation. And recently a doctor asked me over lunch what I thought of the stem cell research and embryonic cell research. I said, if conception is the beginning of life, then who wants to destroy that life? To my amazement, the view made complete sense to him. And yet every Christian can speak like that. We need to avoid aggressive speech, which is why Paul says our speech should be gracious, but it shouldn't be boring, which is why he says to season it with salt. And think of the word that means more to the non-Christian. Every day we're asked questions. What did you do on the weekend? How was your trip away? What good book did you read? And we have the opportunity to say something honest. It was a good weekend. Or Sunday sermon on heresy, which made me think how dangerous it is. It was a great holiday. I was reading the life of a Christian and the impact of Christ on their life. Let's practice Christian conversations. Can you practice, for example, after church? Can you steer things to the sermon in a relaxed way? Can you speak without fear or tension of Christ in a conversation with a neighbour? It will need to be sane and thoughtful so they don't think you're weird. Why not begin working through so many questions or read a good book on the topic to better equip yourself?
And also, I mean, Helen, over a long period of time, would tell me little stories about the Bible. So even in the workplace, she would occasionally tell me about stories that she'd recently studied that were in the Bible that conveyed a particular message. And she would apply those messages to things that were happening in the workplace. So I was sort of getting, without knowing it at the time, I was sort of getting some exposure to God's Word through the little things that my friend would share with me during my PhD studies.
When God answered their prayers by opening my eyes, they could kind of see this development in me through their persistence in conversations, through their naturalness in loving me. And I think a big thing was that they were really prepared to ask me and engage in a conversation rather than necessarily just tell me things. And I've talked with them since becoming a Christian, and it was something that they actually decided to do, that they decided that they would try and work out how I thought and what I was thinking and work it out that way.